I've been serving as commissioner for the last almost 2 years now, and I like the work that I'm doing. But prior to becoming commissioner, I practiced law here in Pike County for 42 years, and I specialized in local government and real estate. They were my bread and butter issues. And with local government, I'm mostly representing townships, boroughs. In fact, at one point or another, because it's a long career, I did work in 12 of the 13 municipalities in Pike County. Some for a long time. I actually represented one township, Palmyra, for 37 years, and others for just a couple of one or two meetings kind of thing, filling in for another lawyer. But basically, I got to know local government quite well. I also was way back in the 90s, I was the public defender for Pike County for 5 years. And so when I became aware of this position, I didn't actually run for office. I was appointed by the court. 5 people applied for the position, and the judges actually interviewed everybody and decided on who to appoint. But I thought it was a good opportunity for me to continue to serve, semi-retire, and I thought my experience might be helpful. I was surprised to find out that my experience with local governments has proved to be very helpful in a number of the things that the county has to address. I also know who has what jurisdiction and when we have to stay in our lane, whether some people want us to advocate for something or not. If we don't have regulatory power over it, we can't. But in terms of going forward, I'd like to serve out another full term, and I hope that's going to happen. I hope people elect me in November. We have a number of projects we're working on, and some of them are very complicated, quite frankly. Key ones being the community hospital that we are developing with Northwell Health Systems and a Pennsylvania partner that they're going to be naming shortly. We also have worked with our federal Congressman Matt Cartwright, a good Democrat, but he's bipartisan too. And what he's been able to do is, in his position with appropriations, he's been able to earmark water for 2 projects, one of which I was very involved with, actually both, to provide sewer for the corridor between Matamoros and Milford. Right now, the Westfall Sewer Authority, which I was their lawyer also for 20 years, they serve parts of Westfall Township and Matamoros, which is the far eastern part of our county. But there's a proposal, and there's been a submission to the Pennsylvania DEP to extend the line from Westfall out to Milford Borough. It is much needed for a number of reasons, but the important part was, okay, if you do it, how are you going to pay for it? And there is federal money being earmarked for that project. Now, there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through in order for that to happen, and that's controlled by the municipalities, not the county. But the county has been helpful in trying to find money. That is something that we can do through federal state connections that we have with our legislators. The other public sewer project, and then I'll stop, is up at the other end of the county in Palmyra Township, which I represented, as I said, for many years. They're also doing what's called an Act 537 study to try and have a sewer line run along Route 507 and 6, which is near to Lake Wallenpaupack the Lake Wallenpaupack, which is both a recreational and economic driver up at that end of the county. And in order to protect the water quality in there, public sewers are really needed, but it also would help encourage economic development. So those are like 3 big projects that I've been involved with. I'll mention the affordable housing, which is another thing we've been working on, but I believe there's going to be a separate question on that.
Yeah.
Those are the reasons I want to stay in office. So.
No, definitely. Let's talk about the hospitals. You mentioned the building of the community hospitals. Pike County lacks a hospital. So what have you done and what you look to do to guarantee residents have quality health care?
Yeah, Pike County is unique in that it's the only one of the 67 counties in Pennsylvania that does not have at the moment either an urgent care or a hospital of any kind. And the good news is that, in fact, I had only been in office for about a month when we first started meeting with the representatives of the Northwell Health System, which is a very large health operator. They're actually the 5th largest health provider in the United States. They employ 82,000 people, most of which are in New York State, largest single employer other than the government in New York State. And they operate, I think it's 21 hospitals now in New York State, some of them in the city of New York and also the suburbs to the north. And they came to us partly because it so happens that some of their executives have homes up in this area, several actually, up in Lake Wallenpaupack and up in Woodlock, which are both in Pike County. And they recognize the need for some medical services. So they first talked to us about the urgent care idea. And the end result of that is that right now they're finishing off a space that's already, the walls are already up, but they're doing the interior work right now at the Weiss Market, which is in Delaware Township. It's in the Dingman's Ferry area on Route 739. And that will be they call it an emergent care, but an urgent care, which is a walk-in facility. It's not 24/7. It's got hours, but it's open 7 days a week. And they're also that one's going to be enhanced in the sense that they're going to provide lab testing, that kind of thing. It is in an area where 50% of our population lives. There was a urgent care down in downtown Milford, just about 3 blocks from where I'm sitting at the administration building. That was run by a hospital down in Newton, the Atlantic Hospital Group. Unfortunately, they did not have good arrangements for taking insurance in Pennsylvania, and they did not have much traffic, and so they closed about 12, 15 years ago now. Maybe not quite that long, but in any event, they closed a number of years ago. I live up at the other end of the county, so I never utilized that. But that it turns out that Milford, while it might be the government center, it's not the center of the population. The second one, urgent care, that's going to open probably by midsummer of 2024, is up in the Lake Wallenpaupack area in Palmyra Township, Pike County. Those are great and will absolutely fill a need. But the other bigger project that we're working on, which is not going to happen next year, but I hope that will be happening or certainly underway while I'm still in office and once I'm reelected, and that is to have a community hospital. Northwell is going to partner wisely with a Pennsylvania provider, one of the major providers in northeastern Pennsylvania, and they are going to develop what they actually use the term community hospital. What that means is it's going to be a 24/7 emergency department with ancillary services, with some beds, probably anywhere from 8 to 12 or 15, so that if somebody comes in there in a crisis situation, can be treated in the emergency department, can stay there for a few days until they're ready to leave, assuming that they don't have really serious injuries.
One of the concerns voiced by some Pike residents that I've come to know is it pertains to the impending construction of a sizable warehouse in Milford. They worry about the potential issues with increased traffic, strain on local infrastructure, and the warehouse's location, which is said to be directly above an aquifer. The question arises is, can Pike County effectively manage growth while safeguarding the environment, or is this a challenging balance to strike? And I know the county doesn't have much say in the development because this is a township issue.
It is a township issue. It's a Milford Township issue. And in fact, I think they're in either night 3 or 4 of what's going to be several zoning hearings. As I mentioned, I was a municipal attorney for many years. I had zoning procedures. I had one that lasted 15 months before it was finally decided. And even then it wasn't over because it got appealed to the courts. But on a project like this, it does take a while. It's also important, and we've said this at multiple commissioners' meetings, that people understand that the county commissioners cannot take a position on something that's already in the legal process, because however this is decided by Milford Township, who has sole jurisdiction over it right now, one side or the other is not going to be happy, and they're almost certainly going to appeal. If they take a appeal from the township decision, it goes to the Pike County Court of Common Pleas. That's the county court, and we pay everybody in that county court system except the judges, who are actually paid by the state. But all the other employees of the county system of the court system are our employees. So if we take a position for or against this, and privately I have my own feelings about it, but in any event, we can't take a public stance. People feel that's wrong that we not do that, but we've been advised by our solicitor, and I didn't need the advice because I did it for a living for 40 years, that you can't interfere. You have to stay in your lane sometimes, and that's why we have been doing that. What we can do, though, is to tell people that they can get involved. The most appropriate, and like I said, I've been doing this for a lot of years. I've appealed cases up to the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court many times. The best party to fight this thing is going to be the Milford Water Authority, because they utilize that aquifer to provide water to Milford Borough and Milford Township. And I know that they are involved as a party. They've hired experts. They've got good lawyers. I know their primary lawyer, but I even think they have somebody else who's working with him. And I expect them to do the right thing. And if, in fact, they can show that it's going to pose a threat of harm to the water, even if the developer comes in with $1 million system to try and protect the water, if they can show that it's going to be a problem, then that would justify the township turning it down. But people don't always understand in zoning procedures, you can't make a decision based on a show of hands. It has to be based on objective evidence, whether you're approving it or whether you're denying it. And so we have to allow that to happen. Does something that large concern me that it would be there? Yeah, it does, except that I also know that on paper, the township, I can't fault Milford Township for not their zoning ordinance says warehouses can go there. They didn't restrict the size. It just says they can go there. But if you're going to put a warehouse somewhere, it normally is at the intersection of a state and interstate highway, and that's exactly where that property is. So on paper, it looks like the right place for it. Now, with an aquifer there, maybe the township could have looked at it differently. I think it was about 20 years ago now, a Home Depot was proposed for that exact same location. And I was one of the two attorneys involved with the township who worked to process that. And at the end, that was denied. And it was denied because of the concern of water quality. And I hope to write that decision.
Let's shift gears here. Let's talk about opioids.
Sure.
It's a situation that's plaguing the nation, is also here locally. You are the incumbent, but do you believe the county as a whole is currently taking enough action to address the issue? And what additional measures do you believe can be implemented? And how do you plan to contribute to the positive change in this regard?
It's a particularly a concern of mine because, as I've mentioned to a few people, and I've even said at a couple of our meetings, I'm proud to share the fact that I have 43 years of continuous sobriety as an alcoholic and drug addict. So I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Fortunately, I found the right way to deal with that problem a number of years ago. My life has been so much better. I've helped lots of people, dozens of people get into treatment. I also just stepped down as the secretary of a statewide organization called Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, which helps lawyers and other people, lawyers' families, who have problems with drugs and alcohol, as well as some other life-affecting problems. But the reason why I say there is an opportunity, it is a horrible scourge, particularly the fentanyl situation that exists now, because one, that's the most popular opioid that's still around, but also because one small dose can be lethal the first time you try it. That's not really true if somebody drinks too much. That's generally not true of even some types of other drugs like, say, marijuana or something like that. Pike County, before I became commissioner, had signed on for the lawsuit against the makers of the drugs, Pharma and some others. And there was a settlement that involved some, not all of the providers or the manufacturers, that yielded quite a bit of money to various throughout the nation. And that's allocated with some specific rules. There's a second wave of settlement money that's coming our way. I don't think we've gotten it yet, but it's literally supposed to come before the end of the year. That involves the distributors of the opioid pills when the crisis was really going full blood, which includes Walmart and CVS and some of the major pharmacy companies. There's even another one that's coming down the pike still. I don't know what the result's going to be of that. But the reality is that Pike County is going to get several $100,000 in upfront money and then some money every year thereafter for multiple years, not forever, but for multiple years. It comes with a lot of rules and restrictions about how you can use it. For example, you can't just use it to fund drug and alcohol because it won't cover alcohol problems, okay? But you can use it for lots of things, including education of the public, particularly education of kids in our schools. And so what we're developing is we have a task force that meets and involves the district attorney, the sheriff, the probation department, the drug and alcohol, mental health, and even representatives from the school districts. And we've tried to figure out how to best allocate those resources. We're still working on that because the money just started to come in, but we've also decided that we're actually hiring somebody who's going to be within the district attorney's office, and I will compliment the district attorney for coming up with this idea, who's going to be, her job is going to be primarily to keep track of the monies, make sure that the things that we can fund meet the requirements of the settlement agreements. So we expect that we're going to be able to try and at least make people aware of the danger, particularly of fentanyl, We certainly have tried to increase drug and alcohol awareness. We're part of a three-county entity called Monroe Pike Mental Health and Development Services, and drug and alcohol treatments is part of the mental health component there. They have an office here in Pike County. It's just about a mile from where I'm standing, sitting in the administration building, and we have full-time staff there. That wasn't always true in the past, but that has been that way for several years now, and we've been able to increase funding to that. So it is an opportunity to get more awareness out there. That's the biggest thing.
So the last question before we go, why should folks vote for you over any of your opponents?
Yeah. Primarily, I can't speak to the two Republican incumbents, but there's two Democrats running. Of course, the other Democrat didn't get on the ballot till the end of August because she really wasn't the one that ran in the primary. Someone else did. That person then took herself off the list. And the Democratic committee decided to put a second person on. And quite frankly, that forced the situation where the two Democrats are running against each other. It'd be nice to say, maybe we could get two Democrats elected. I just didn't see that as a reality because of the numbers in our community and the timing in terms of what the other two had accomplished. But what I do bring to it is the experience, and that's why I mentioned the 42 years. I certainly know local government inside and out, and I know county government inside and out. It certainly helped it for the last 22 months I've been commissioner, and I like it. I also have the opportunity to spend the time that's involved in this job. Someone told me, I guess you go to a meeting maybe once a week. No, I put in about 30 to 40 hours a week on this job. Some of it's at home, but I come into the office 4 days a week. And am I here from 8:30 to 5? No, but I'm here multiple hours every day, and I'm putting in the time. And when I'm not here 24/7, I get texts at 2 in the morning from one of my commissioners saying, I couldn't sleep. What about this? Now, I don't always pick that phone up, but nonetheless, it is a job that requires a lot of time and effort, and the experience matters, and I do have that experience.
We're talking to Anthony Waldron, the incumbent who's running for re-election as a Democratic candidate for the Pike County Board of Commissioners. Thank you so much for talking to us and let us know about your thoughts on the issues.
Thank you, Patricia. Good talking to you. Great.
For Radio Catskill, I'm Patricio Roballo.